stories making headlines this hour. The nominee to head U.S. Forces Korea says he supports Washington's planned 2015 handover, a wartime operational control of Korean troops to Seoul, despite South Korea's call to push back the transfer. An alarming discovery of more military hardware. Panamanian investigators uncovered fighter jet engines and 5 military vehicles from a seized North Korean ship, which was found carrying arms from Cuba in violation of UN resolutions. And the verdict is out on the biggest breach of classified information in the U.S. history. Bradley Manning, an Army private who handed over thousands of classified U.S. military and diplomatic documents to WikiLeaks, was cleared of aiding the enemy, but convicted of espionage. For these stories and more, next on Primetime News. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Wednesday, the last day of July here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Lee Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin in Washington, where the nominee for the head of the U.S. forces in Korea says he supports the planned 2015 handover of wartime operational control, despite South Korea's call to push back the transfer.
His comments came while defense officials from Seoul and Washington were wrapping up their 2-day dialogue in Seoul, where the allied nations continued their discussions on the timing of the transfer and North Korea's security threats. Our Kim Young-gil has our top story.
Lieutenant General Curtis Scaparotti said at his Senate confirmation hearing on Tuesday that he plans to follow through with the scheduled timeline for the wartime operational control transfer in December 2015 if he is appointed to lead the U.S. Forces Korea.
Yes, I do agree with the timetable. It is a bilateral agreement, Strategic Alliance 2015, to turn over operational control by December of 2015.
The Lieutenant General said moving forward with the plan will pave the way for Korea's enhanced combat readiness, but emphasized that the South Korean military will have to meet a detailed set of requirements by the agreed-upon date. The question of whether South Korea should retake operational control of its troops is a controversial issue in the country. Seoul was scheduled to retake wartime operational control of its troops in April 2012, but asked for a delay in 2010. Seoul asked for another delay to 2015 earlier this year. South Korean military officials believe it may be difficult for the military to be fully ready for the transition by the target date. Senior South Korean and U.S. military officials discussed the Afghan transfer issue during a semi-annual round of defense talks in Seoul Tuesday and Wednesday. The talks focused on military and security issues with the aim of providing a strong deterrent against North Korea. The defense chiefs plan to meet again in October, though the two sides will continue to discuss the issues through various channels. Meanwhile, the No동-Shinmun, the official paper of the North's ruling Workers' Party, reported Wednesday that South Korea's desire to delay the Afghan transfer shows it intends to invade the North. The paper also said it is a sign the South is giving up its sovereignty. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
South Korea's humanitarian aid groups began sending food and medicine for children in the impoverished north this Wednesday.
This comes despite the heightened tension between the two Koreas over the impasse over their joint business park. Arirang News' Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports on how much help will flow to the regime.
5 South Korean civic groups that received approval from the South Korean government earlier this week began sending humanitarian aid to North Korea on Wednesday. The organizations will send around $1.4 million worth of medicine and food for young North Korean children throughout next month. Recent surveys by the United Nations show more than 1 in 4 North Korean children under the age of 5 suffer from chronic malnutrition. Figures also point to rising infant mortality rates in the impoverished state in recent years. The current rate is more than 6 times higher than that of the South. Seoul's seemingly generous gesture comes a matter of days after the two Koreas walked away from talks on reopening their jointly run factory zone in the north. South Korean President Park Geun-hye has stressed humanitarian aid to North Korea will be dealt with separately from political issues. But the government's plan to approve private shipments of aid was announced as South Korean Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae made what he called the last offer for talks to the north regarding the Kaesong industrial complex. North Korea has yet to respond. The two Koreas have held 6 rounds of working-level talks this month on ways to reopen the business park, but Pyongyang has not provided the security guarantees the South has been looking for to restart operations there. The factory zone has been shuttered for more than 3 months since the North unilaterally withdrew all of its workers amid an escalation of inter-Korean tensions. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Panamanian authorities say they found more military hardware from an earlier seized North Korean ship.
Now, on top of the missile radar systems and 2 fighter jets they found in pieces last week, a dozen of fighter jet engines and several military vehicles were uncovered. Han Daeun has the latest on the discovery.
Panamanian investigators said on Tuesday local time that they've discovered 12 motors for MiG-21 fighter jets and 5 military vehicles on the seized North Korean cargo ship.
In these containers, we found what seems to be jet engines for MiG-21s. We are talking about 12 jet engines in the containers we have opened so far, as well as a vehicle that seems to be some type of control center, used to direct batteries of radars and missiles.
This comes a week after Panama President Ricardo Martinelli told reporters that 2 MiG-21 fighter jets originally produced by the Soviet Union in 1950s and 2 units of missile radar systems had been found on the vessel. The ship named Cheongcheongang was en route from Cuba to North Korea when it was seized in Panama during an inspection. Local investigators say the weapons were hidden under sacks of brown sugar. Panamanian authorities are currently inspecting all of the seized military equipment while they wait for an inspection team from the UN Security Council to arrive on site.
As acting foreign minister, I've been speaking with UN Ambassador Thalasinos in New York, who at the same time has been speaking with representatives from that organization. They've given us a date, which is the 12th of August, so that we may be able to work.
Regarding the 35 North Korean crew members that are being held in detention, President Martinelli has said that diplomatic negotiations will need to take place before they can return to the north. Local officials say they face up to 6 years in prison. Han Daeun, Arirang News.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features restrictions is on the rise. Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature, circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report.
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meaning came on the news are trying to cover up the South's true intentions. The President Park Geun-hye has picked the United Kingdom as the destination of her first European trip since taking office in February. The president was invited by Queen Elizabeth II to visit from November 5th to the 7th. The presidential office spokesperson Kim Hae said President Park is scheduled to meet with the Queen and hold a bilateral summit with Prime Minister David Cameron, and that the two countries are still working out the details of the visit. Korea and the UK are currently commemorating their 130th anniversary of diplomatic relations. President Park's state visit to England will be the second for a sitting Korean president after former President Roh Moo-hyun's back in 2004. On the economic front, Korea's leading conglomerates keep posting handsome profits in sales, but it doesn't seem to be trickling down. That's partly because the companies are making many of their most profitable profits overseas. Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Although the nation's largest companies like Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor continue posting record or near-record profits and sales recently, most Koreans don't feel they're benefiting from the stellar performances. Why? One big reason is that the companies are focusing their expansion on key projects overseas. Samsung Electronics has announced major investment plans to spend a whopping 24 trillion won, or roughly 21 billion US dollars this year, after the tech giant last week reported a record profit of $8.5 billion in the second quarter of this year. Most of the investments, however, will be made to expand and update its production facilities overseas, particularly in China. That means Samsung won't create jobs or boost economic activities in Korea. Samsung allocated 1/3 of the $21 billion investment spending to build a flash memory chip factory at Xi'an, China, and an additional $3 billion to build a display panel factory in Suzhou on China's east coast. Korea accounts for well below a quarter of the company's expenditure for investment projects this year. It's a similar story for Hyundai Motor, which also reported a record sales and near record high profit in the second quarter of this year. Of the 2.4 million cars the company produced in the first 6 months of this year, over 60% rolled out of its factories overseas. With the likes of Samsung and Hyundai building their new factories overseas, it's not hard to figure out why their prosperity won't be felt by ordinary Koreans at home. 황지혜, Arirang News.
On the other side of the globe in Los Angeles, hundreds of people gathered to witness the unveiling of a memorial to remember the thousands of young women who were forced into sexual slavery by Japanese soldiers during World War II. However, as our Kim Min-ji reports, the Japanese government is not pleased.
Glendale City on Tuesday unveiled a monument honoring the victims of Japan's wartime use of sexual slaves, becoming the first memorial to be set up overseas. The statue is a replica of the peace monument Korean civic leaders set up across the road from the Japanese embassy in Seoul. As the monument was unveiled, a smile appeared on the face of Kim Bok-dong, a victim of sexual slavery.
Before we die, Japan needs to come forward and offer an official apology and reparation.
After a great deal of persuasion from Korean community groups, the monument was installed in Glendale City Park as part of efforts to remember the inhumane acts committed by Japanese soldiers during the war.
The campaign was set up thanks to the American people and their contributions.
However, the installment did not go smoothly as the Japanese government and Japanese American residents strongly opposed the establishment. Hundreds of citizens wrote opposition emails, while the Consular General in Los Angeles even sent an opposition letter saying Japan has provided sufficient reparations to its war victims. Glendale City, which has designated July 30th to honor the so-called comfort women, said the installment is meaningful as the residents now understand the correct history.
This is for them. This is one to educate the public about what took place, but also a tribute and a monument to what they had to endure.
The statue will represent the violation of human rights and horrific acts committed by the Japanese military. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And the verdict is out. Bradley Manning, the 25-year-old former U.S. soldier who handed over thousands of classified U.S. military and diplomatic documents to WikiLeaks, has been acquitted of charges of aiding the enemy, but convicted of espionage. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
Bradley Manning was found not guilty of aiding the enemy, but he has been convicted of 20 lesser charges. On Tuesday, 25-year-old Manning, who was arrested in 2010 for leaking hundreds of thousands of classified documents to the WikiLeaks website, was found guilty of charges including espionage, theft, and computer fraud. He could face a maximum of up to 136 years behind bars. Human rights group Amnesty International argued the charge of, quote, aiding the enemy was not evident in this case due to a lack of evidence that Manning intentionally tried to harm his country. Manning supporters think the verdict was too tough on the former U.S. Army soldier.
People like Bradley can't stand up and tell us what our government is doing when it's wrong, ostensibly wrong, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Among the materials Manning sent to WikiLeaks were videos of a 2007 attack by an American Apache helicopter that killed a dozen people in Iraq, including some Reuters news staff. It also includes battlefield reports in Iraq and Afghanistan and diplomatic cables between Washington and other embassies containing state secrets. Manning's collection of documents were the catalyst of the WikiLeaks website and boosted the profile of its founder, Julian Assange.
It is a dangerous precedent and an example of national security extremism. It is a short-sighted judgment that cannot be tolerated, and it must be reversed.
Assange called for a full acquittal for Manning and said his case may affect similar cases, like the one related to Edward Snowden, the CIA whistleblower who leaked details of several top-secret U.S. mass surveillance programs to the press. The military judge for Manning's case, Colonel Denise Lin, said she would release a written statement of her ruling at a later date. Manning's sentencing hearing starts on Wednesday. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The highly anticipated Korean film Snowpiercer finally opened today here in Korea.
It's been generating the interest of filmgoers around the world for its intriguing plot and stunning cinematography. To tell us more, our culture correspondent Park Ji-won joins us live in the studio. Ji-won, hello.
Hi guys. Well, this Korean film is a record setter in many aspects. First, this Korean film is the first movie that's been released in 167 countries in the world, and this is the Korean film with the largest budget ever in Korean cinema history, with about $40 million US, and half of the budget have been already racked up through the sales of the distribution rights. Let's take a look at first.
7 years ago, director Bong Joon-ho first read a French graphic novel about the last human survivals on a train during a new ice age and imagined adapting it for film. He did, and the film Snowpiercer finally hits the big screen this summer. Director Bong Joon-ho, who has in previous works examined the nature of human beings in extreme circumstances, goes even farther in this film to delve into human nature and the socio-economic divide. The film has strong cinematic imagery and a dark but intriguing plot that keeps audiences on the edge of their seats. The film's leading actors and actresses were in Seoul to celebrate the film's world premiere, appearing at a press conference and a red carpet event with a host of Korean celebrities.
Well, Ji-won, as we just saw, the cast is certainly a stellar one. Many familiar faces there.
Right, that's right. In addition to top-rated Korean actors like Song Kang-ho, we've seen some, big Hollywood names like Chris Evans and Ed Harris, and also some big art house names like Tilda Swinton, John Hurt, and Jamie Bell. So given that this is director Bong's first English language production, although he has been recognized in international film festivals, I think it's still very amazing to this extraordinary cast. So let's hear why these actors choose his film.
What made me decide to be in a Bong Joon-ho film? Bong Joon-ho. Not only his work, but really the person, and to work within the heart of this great Korean cinema that you have with this person, who, as far as I'm concerned, is at the very pinnacle of all world cinema.
When I first read the script, I had not seen any of Director Bong's films, and having watched them all, I was so blown away and so impressed. They were so good. And it was just such an exciting notion to kind of broaden my horizon as an actor and as a person, to work with people who aren't just, who approach the craft differently than I do. And it was a really educational experience.
Right, Ji-won, and you said earlier that the distribution rights has been sold to 167 countries. That's quite impressive.
Yeah, that's impressive. And also, this film is the first Korean film that will be given a wide release in the U.S. market. So, director Bong's previous films like The Host and Mother were released in many countries, but they were mostly art house screenings. So this is wide release, and let's hear what director Bong had to say about this.
I believe everyone will be able to relate to the story in some way. The film deals with the divide between the rich and poor, the powerful and the powerless, which exists in almost every country. It's a universal theme, and I believe audiences will be able to relate to it no matter what their individual circumstances are.
And earlier this year, we saw other Korean directors release their English language films. Kim Ji-woon, Park Chan-wook, they released The Last Stand and Stoker, but critics did not seem to take to those films very well. How has response to this film been?
Well, so far, international reviews have been very positive, and they praised director Bong for not losing his distinctive visual and storytelling style. So let's hear what one of the experts I met during the interview.
I and the other international critics have just appreciated the bold vision that Bong has put forth on screen. Some people were a little worried because of after the poor performance of The Last Stand and Stoker, two films that I didn't dislike, but I could understand that they were not particularly successful. But any reservations were quickly brushed aside as I was lucky enough to see it at a press screening last Monday, and I found it to be a truly a phenomenal film, and I think it will easily surpass the other two in terms of a Korean film on the international market.
And Chi-Won, I hear that this is not the only Korean film that's going global this summer.
Yes, another Korean blockbuster, Mr. Go, is opening in theaters in China and Southeast Asian countries, including Singapore, Thailand, and India. The Korean Film Council says more and more producers and entertainment companies in Korea are now working working on international film projects targeting the global market. And experts say this shows that the Korean film industry has grown in its capacity to present more appealing films for the audiences around the world.
Right, and it seems like the audiences around the world really want to see more of Korean films, so this is a great time. Thanks so much, Ji-won.
My pleasure.
The weightlifting community here in Korea is reeling over sexual harassment allegations launched against a head coach of the national team.
To shed light on the incident, SJ is standing by at the Sports Center. SJ, what's going on?
Guys, the sport has been looking for the next Chang Mi-ran, and one weightlifter who many consider to be the next Chang Mi-ran has actually come forward and claimed that her head coach sexually harassed her. In a shocking letter written by the 18-year-old weightlifter, whose identity we can't disclose for legal reasons, she accused her head coach, 55-year-old Oh Seung-woo, of offering her a massage she felt was improper. Now, the letter stated that she felt she had no other choice but to bring the issue to the public. Now, the teenager added that she felt uncomfortable in Coach Oh's presence and has stopped all training. And now shifting gears to the Korean Grand Prix, a lot is being done to promote the race each year, but looks like the lack of money could spell its end for 2014. Now, two races are being canceled from next season's F1 calendar. The Indian Grand Prix is one of them, and the Korean Grand Prix is likely to be the other. Formula One President Bernie Ecclestone stated that because of the deficit the Korean Grand Prix has racked up each year, the event will probably be replaced with a new host nation. Meanwhile, the 4th Korea Grand Prix will go ahead as scheduled from October 4th to the 6th in Yeongam. Now, with that said, finishing things off with Wednesday night's KBO action as the Samsung Lions took on the Kia Tigers once again, with the bench-clearing brawl from Tuesday night still at the back of their minds. Of course, Game 2 of the 3-game series kicks off with Chung Hyung-sik, the first hitter here, leadoff triple. Now, he would later score a round thanks to Chae Young-woo's sac fly to left. It's going to be a leaping catch by Na Ji-won. Check out this next play here. Great play. Still 1-0 Samsung Lions. Second inning, Kim Ju-young RBI single to left field ties the ball game 1-1. We go over to the third inning. Here comes the Kia Tigers. Bunt misplayed by the Samsung Lions. Scores a run, making it 2-1 before Na Ji-won is going to single this one up to center field. 3-1 Kia Tigers. Next batter, Lee Bum-ho, RBI double to left field, 4-1 Kia Tigers. Well, we go over to the 6th inning here. Kia 4-2. Choi Tae-in is going to end up having them score, and Samsung ends up coming all the way back with a 10-run 6th inning, including this one. Choi Tae-in 3-run shot to straightaway center field. Samsung would cruise through in this game 16-4, your final score. And now taking a look at other scores from around the league. The Nexen Heroes over the Hana Eagles 5-2, NC Dinos beating the SK Wyverns 3-0, and the Tucson Bears and the Lotte Giants currently in the bottom of the 9th inning. Tucson up 9-1. So with that said, that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. See you guys again after midnight for your sports needs.
Time to go over to our Kwon So-ah at the Weather Center for the latest forecast. So I hear it's going to get a tad hotter tomorrow.
Yes, Sean, we'll have a slight rise in temperatures, and along with a high humidity, the chance of heat stroke is going to go up too.
Doesn't sound so good. Any tips for our viewers on how to prevent getting heat-related illnesses?
Well, I think the best way to fight the heat is still drinking lots of water. The point here is, however, to drink it regularly, even if you don't feel thirsty. So please do that tomorrow, especially because we don't have much rain in the forecast. The country will be at the edge of a high pressure system, while the monsoon front is going to linger far down south. So apart from the south coastal areas in Jeolla province, we won't be affected by the monsoons until possibly Friday. However, there are chances of some pop-up showers here and there, and this includes parts of the Gangwon, Chungcheong, as well as Gyeongsang provinces. Otherwise, it's going to be hot and humid nationwide. In fact, the capital Seoul will be around 3 degrees hotter than today, with a daytime high of 32 degrees. Daegu soars to 34, and Busan hits 30. And Jeju Island won't get a rest off the heat even at night, with temperatures ranging from 27 to 33 degrees, while Dokdo and Monkumgang will be lingering in the 20s. And that's it for now. Enjoy the rest of July, everyone, and see you back in August or after midnight.
And that's our broadcast on this Wednesday night. I'm Yuji Hain, Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.